The bye weeks are here and everything is about to get more complicated. Waiver claims have never been more important, and I've got the guys you need to keep your fantasy season cooking. I'm Tom Strachan for Fantasy Pros. This is Fantasy Sanctuary. Let's get into it with your Week 5 waiver claims. Woody Marks, 30% rostered. Look, if you're new here, I'll give you a pass, but we have been talking about Woody Marks for weeks now, all through the offseason. We talked about him with various guests we had on. We talked about him on last week's waiver video. We talked about him on Rich's Dynasty buys and sells for the last 2 weeks as well. So I hope that you are smart enough to already have him, but if you don't, he has to be your priority for Week 5. 57% backfield carry share, 17.9% target share, had 21 total touches for 119 scrimmage yards and 2 touchdowns. He had the only backfield rush attempt inside the red zone, and he turned it into an 18-yard touchdown. Look, the Texans, they're going to need Woody Marks out there. Nick Chubb doesn't have the juice anymore. Woody Marks is the best pass catcher when it comes to the running back position, and the Texans, the way they're playing with their offensive line being so poor, they're going to need to continue to get the ball out quickly, and that means Woody Marks is going to continue to see a high volume of passes. Tyler Allgeier, 35% rostered. Look, I'm going to keep going on and on about Tyler Allgeier until he is 50% rostered. This is the second game he's had over 14 PPR points this year. He's had 43 rush attempts. We've seen him get touchdowns in 2 of his 4 games. Now, yes, the Falcons are on a bye in Week 5. So perhaps this is one where you want to see if you can squeeze him through and get him for free later on in the week. But Tyler Allgeier is giving us standalone value. He's given us huge contingent upside if anything goes wrong with Bijan Robinson. We know how elusive he is. He's one of the top players in elusive ratings and missed tackles forced all the time. And he plays. The Falcons like him. So I don't understand why people are not wanting to roster somebody we know is going to be involved. If it's your first time here, Fantasy Sanctuary, we appreciate you joining us. Hit that subscribe button because we have weekly waiver videos, dynasty buys and sells. We've got the tiers, rankings, all that kind of content to get you set up to win. Okay, Kendre Miller, 2% rostered. Carried the ball 11 times, 65 yards and a touchdown yesterday. Now, yes, Kendre Miller is still playing behind Alvin Kamara, who had 15 carries. And yes, Alvin Kamara is seeing all the receiving work. Not that it's counting for very much right now. But this Saints offense, they play fast, and that matters so much. They lead the league in plays per game, and that matters a lot because the more plays there are, the more chances for players to touch the ball, the more chances there are to score fantasy points. Miller, he got his first 2 carries inside the 10-yard line of the season, including 1 drive where he subbed in for the Kamara inside the red zone. And Miller now has more yards per carry, more yards after contact per carry, twice as many avoided tackles per carry, and a higher touchdown rate, and a higher rate of gaining at least 10 yards on his run. I just think that there's plenty of value in Kendre Miller when we look at this Saints team who are now 0-4, and they have to be wondering what they're going to do this season. Alvin Kamara is somebody they could easily move on from. They could trade him. They could recoup some draft capital there. And if that happens, Kendre Miller could be a top 24 running back every single week. Chris Rodriguez, 13% rostered. Look, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt has been a fun player, but it seems clear that the Commanders are going to use a committee, and when we get down to the bye weeks, having committee running backs who we know are going to be involved, it does matter. And Chris Rodriguez has 3 more carries than Bill or Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt over the last 2 weeks, and Rodriguez leads the team with 98 rushing yards since Austin Eckler tore his Achilles. It might not be the most valuable backfield, but this is a backfield on a team which, when Jaden Daniels is out there, has the potential to score at any moment, and I'd like to take shots on that when we need players to carry us through bye weeks. Let's talk quarterback. If you've got Lamar Jackson and you're hurting, if you're needing a little bit of insurance for Week 5, and if you're worried about that situation, or if you've just been playing through misery with somebody else, then let's talk about Jaxson Dart. Now, I'm always play your rookies early. I think that much gets worried about that we just don't have control over. And Jaxson Dart yesterday, even with the offensive line, he looked calm under pressure. He only completed 13 of 20 passes, which, yes, we'd like to see that number be a little bit higher, a little closer to 14 or 15 there. But 111 for a touchdown through the air, and then he also added 54 rushing yards. That came on a mix of scrambles, which you'd expect given the offensive line issues, as well as some designed runs, which was always part of the thesis with Jaxson Dart. We know that he was a runner. He had over 400 rushing yards in his last season at college. He also got a rushing touchdown. He didn't seem afraid to run, and he came close to a 20-point day. Next week, He plays the Saints, who play fast, whose defense is very questionable. And I think that if you're looking for somebody to stream next week, then Jaxson Dart absolutely has to be near the top of the list. Staying with the Giants, but moving to the wide receiver position. Darius Slayton, 2% rostered. Now, Slayton led the team yesterday with 3 receptions for 44 yards. Yes, that's not exactly fantasy gold, but it's good enough that we can build on it, and we can expect more in games where they're planning from the get-go to be without Malik Neighbors. In the 2 games that he played without Malik Neighbors last year, he averaged 19 PPR points. Now, yes, part of that came with guys like Jameis Winston throwing the ball, and perhaps Jaxson Dart isn't quite to Jameis Winston's level yet. I think that's fair to say. But this team is going to have to figure out a way to win. They know that jobs are on the line. And I would be very surprised if Darius Slayton wasn't a big part of the game plan going forward. Christian Kirk, 35% rostered, 12 targets in the last 2 games. Really didn't need to do much against Tennessee. The Texans, they had this game under control from the get-go. And I think that people are still a little bit down on the idea of Christian Kirk because they want Jaden Higgins, they want Jalen Noel to be a thing. Those 2 guys this week, in a blowout where they were completely in control of the game, still only earned 1 target each. Meanwhile, Christian Kirk is that outlet. We talked about Woody Marks, but CJ Stroud, he needs to get the ball out quickly because the offensive line is woeful. Now, one thing that will really work for the Texans is next week they go against the Ravens, my Baltimore Ravens, one of the worst defenses in the league right now, who are incredibly beaten up. They've got no pass rush. So perhaps with CJ Stroud getting a little more time, he can get the ball out and he can set his wide receivers up for more success. The Ravens lost all kinds of players in the secondary at the defensive line yesterday, and I don't have any worry about that fixture. And I think that Christian Kirk is a plug-and-play streamer for next week. We got a few more players, so don't get out of here just yet. Make sure you're sticking around because we've plenty more good players who you could use in week 5. But if you've got questions, drop them in the comments below. Whether the trade starts, sits, we answer everything around here. Elic Ayomanor, 30% rostered. It was not a good week for Ayomanor, but he led the team with 7 targets. There was nobody else over 3. He led the team with 44 receiving yards. We've seen him be the Titans' most reliable wide receiver, which hurts me because I was big on Calvin Ridley this offseason. But Ayomanor, he was a top 30 wide receiver in each of the last 2 weeks before week 4. He's caught the only passing touchdowns that Cam Ward has thrown, 2 of them. And I think that we're seeing a player really emerge. And now you look at the upcoming fixtures. Arizona, which isn't an amazing one, but it's not a terrible one. And then the Raiders, which is a very, very sort of playable fixture for fantasy football. And then the New England Patriots as well. So I want Ayomanor. I think he's going to be very useful over the bye weeks. And I think that you should prioritize him at the wide receiver position. Going to tight end, Brenton Strange, 28% rostered, went 6 for 45 versus the 49ers, tied with Brian Thomas for the most targets on the team. He has 19 receptions on the year. He hasn't exploded yet for fantasy football. Part of that is because he hasn't found his way into the end zone. We know how much that makes a difference at the tight end position, but he's involved. He's out there constantly. And when it comes to the tight end position, if you can't find a guy scoring you touchdowns, then at least find a guy who's getting targets and at least on the field a lot. And that's what Brenton Strange is right now. This Jags team, they seem to be figuring things out under Liam Cohen. The wide receivers have been a problem, but Trevor Lawrence is playing okay. Brenton Strange is playing okay. And I'd be fine saying that Brenton Strange is going to be my tight end for the next couple of weeks. And then diving deep, Oronde Gadsden, 3% rostered. We talked about him last week when he was 0% rostered. And we're not seeing crazy returns from him yet, but he played 23 of 42 snaps. It was all on downs and 6 of 10 on third downs. Like, he is playing ahead of Tyler Conklin. Maybe this gets a bit more messy when Will Dissly gets back out there. But for now, Oronde Gadsden seems to have earned the trust of Greg Roman and the trust of Justin Herbert, and that counts for an awful lot. Greg Roman has constantly utilized tight ends throughout his career. You look at his time in Baltimore when he had Mark Andrews there, and it feels like there is going to be plenty of plays designed for Oronde Gadsden now that he has earned the trust of his teammates.
And this is your drop list. Jonnu Smith, it doesn't matter that he's back with Arthur Smith. We're seeing the same kind of Arthur Smith usage we've seen frustrated us for so long. Jonnu Smith just isn't relevant there whilst we're trying to get 3 tight ends involved. Adam Thielen with the Vikings. Now with Jordan Addison's back, we're seeing just not enough work to go around, and he's probably the 4th best option there. Josh Palmer with the Bills. They're just still using too many options on this offense without focusing on one player. He's a better and best ball type player, even if that. Then Jerome Ford with Quinshon Judkins, Dylan Sampson there. He's not getting a look in. Happy to drop him. The upside just probably isn't there at all, even if there was an injury. Hunter Renfrow, not enough passing volume to go around with the Carolina Panthers. I think that you can safely say, even if he gets the odd touchdown here and there, unless you're in deep leagues, he's not going to contribute to your roster. And then Kyle Williams. Look, I had a lot of hope for Kyle Williams. Thought that he can contribute right away, but the Patriots don't seem to be getting him involved, and I'm willing to take the risk of dropping him to waivers.
Those are your week 5 waivers. Make sure you let us know in the comments which guys you want to be picking up and what we can do to help you win your fantasy matchups this week. We will be back very soon with Dynasty buys and sells.